Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the mental health panel. We're excited, so glad for you to be able to join us today. Come on in and let's get through it. You hear echo?
Yes, it's not done.
No. Okay, so here we are. I'm gonna give everybody a few minutes to come on in and join us as we're gonna deal with some really good stuff today. Excited about what we're going to be doing today and covering. I know it's been probably a couple of months since we were last on. So give everyone a few minutes to join us and recognize that the mental health panel is back. We are back in effect again. Yes, like Frankie Beverly and Maze, baby. I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. All right. If you're under 40, you may have no idea what I'm talking about. However, we're going to talk about some very important things today. Talk about mental health. This is not about nobody being cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. This doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You're not crazy. It simply means that just like physical health can be good or bad and must be maintained, so does your mental health. Right. You can have good mental health. You can have poor mental health. But there's something that can be done about it if it's not up to where it needs to be. You just need the proper information and the proper tools in order to maximize your mental health, your capacity. Because when your mental health is good, your life is so much better. Amen. We live here. We live here. I remember the old commercials as I was growing up. The commercials against drugs would say, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mm-hmm. So we want to focus on our mind, our mental, our psyche, our thinking process. The Bible has so much to say about the mind. It's critical. The Bible says, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed. How? By the renewing of the mind. Amen. God said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. It says, set your mind on things above, not things below. He says, whosoever keeps his mind stayed on me, I will keep him in perfect peace. It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It says, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are virtuous, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, he said, think on these things. Then he that thinks on these things will God keep his heart and mind in perfect peace. So it's important that we protect our minds. Proverbs says, guard your heart or guard your subconscious mind. Guard it with everything you've got, for out of it flows the issues of your life. Out of the abundance of the heart, out of the abundance of one's thoughts, his mouth speaks. See, the Bible has a lot to say about our mind and our thought process, and I could go on and on and on. But if it means that much to God, then it should mean that much to us. Amen. Because God knows how critical our minds are, our mental capacities, in regards to how critical of a role it plays in the outcomes of our lives. So I should title this, Get Your Mind Right. Mental Health Panel, Get Your Mind Right. So we're excited. I know people are still going to be joining us and logging on, and I don't want to waste the hour waiting on everyone to realize that we're on. So we're going to get ready to go ahead and jump in. Amen. I thank God for those of you that are already with us. Praise God for you. Debrell Anderson, praise God for you. Alan Ebby Chocolate, God bless you. Sharice Jackson, Deborah Luther Jones, God bless you. Tanya Jackson, Sister Arlene, God bless you, Miss Arlene. I told her you asked about it the other day. Hey.
Oh, yes, and thank you, Miss Arlene.
Oh, bless your heart, Miss Arlene.
Yes.
All right. All right, y'all, we're going to get ready to get started. I have some great, amazing panelists. I'm going to pray in, and then I'm going to introduce our panelists. And we're getting ready to dive into this subject matter on today. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you now for your grace, your mercy, your loving kindness toward us.
Father.
Bless us to be all you've ordained us to be. Use us for your glory. Have your way in our lives. Bless this time together. Make it efficient and effective. Lord God, increase our great mental health capacity. Lord God, bless us with tools that we can utilize to have better mental health. And that, Lord God, we might fulfill your will and purpose for our lives, that you would be glorified thereby, your people edified, and Satan continuously horrified as our minds are stayed on you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So let's introduce right now. First up to bat, I want to introduce the one and only lovely lady standing here beside me right now. The sugar in my Kool-Aid, the cream in my coffee, the peanut butter on my jelly. You understand me? I'm grateful to her who has completed her master's degree as a marriage and family therapist. And she's the one and only my wife, Doran M. Collins. Woo! Woo, 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 woo. Amen. Welcome, Sister Doran.
Thank you guys for having me today. I'm going to learn a lot.
And next up to bat, a great friend of mine. Amen. We go back like flapjacks. You understand me? Been together for a long time, from the days of having the privilege of overseeing the International Young Adult Ministry at the City of Refuge for more than a decade. She served as my great administrator, staff member, everything, /secretary, /dispute, everything. She's the one and only who works in the Public Defender's Office of Los Angeles County. My friend, the great Cheryl Bailey, Esquire. Okay, I brought both of y'all up. Brought them to it. Come on. Welcome, Sister Cheryl.
Yes. Welcome.
And now back by popular demand, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She enjoys working with children, teens, and adults who experience depression, anxiety, psychosis, and crisis. She's passionate for seeing believers experience emotional healing and freedom through therapeutic techniques and God's word. She speaks at facilities, mental wellness workshops, and churches while spreading God's message about Christians, and must intentionally focus on our mental state, because out of that flows the issues of our lives. She's the one and the only licensed marriage and family therapist, Sister Camille Collins.
Welcome.
What a welcome. You gotta feel good after that.
All right. Well, we are excited, and today's subject matter that we're gonna let me start by telling people, feel free to ask questions, to put them in the comments. Cheryl, remind me of what's the email that they want to remain anonymous with their questions.
Calvary Mental Health.
Calvary Mental Health at gmail.com.
Yes.
Okay, I just posted it. So if you want to ask questions and you want to remain anonymous, that's how you can do so, right there at Calvary Mental Health at gmail.com. You know, if anybody's on my personal page, I want to post it there too. So this is how you can ask anonymously. If you want to ask a question, but you don't want no one to know who you are, Calvary Mental Health at gmail.com. But otherwise, if you're asking a question and you don't mind them sees it, you can put it right here in this chat box where you're streaming us at, and we will address it. But today we're going to be talking about self-esteem, and we're also going to be talking about self-care, which they go hand in hand. And I want to introduce this with a subject we were on Sunday morning's worship service about 2 or 3 weeks ago. as we begin to talk about psychological barriers. And we talked about Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, and how when he got to Jericho to lead the children of Israel into the promised land, that it was walled up on every side. It was walled up so tight that the people outside couldn't get in, the people inside couldn't get out. And God told Joshua something very interesting. He told him to see, I have given you Jericho and the king and the mighty men of valor. He told him to see it, picture it, visualize it, imagine it, see it on the inside, see it as if what I've promised you has already happened. And in order for Joshua to do that, he would have to stop looking at the external barriers and everything in his life that was telling him why he couldn't do it, why they wouldn't be able to achieve it, why he would be incapable of accomplishing this task. He would have to look beyond all of that and just believe that it was possible because God graced him to be able to. And once he saw that, he pictured a Jericho, because in order to do that, he would have to picture a Jericho without the walls.
My God.
So the walls that God had to remove first were the walls inside of his mind that were based upon the obstacles outside of his life. And once those were removed, you come to find that the walls of Jericho fell down really easy. They simply yelled and they fell down at God's commandment. And one of the things that this brought about was how many psychological barriers do we have that hinder us from moving forth into the lives God has for us because of what we were told growing up, some experience that happened in our past, things that have affected us in one way or the other that's distorted how we see ourselves. And therefore it hinders how we operate in life. And we want to segue into how that connects to our self-esteem and our self-care. And so I want to start with our professional right here that's on, our licensed marriage family therapist, as it relates to how Sister Camille sees this happening and playing out. And do she see any of the connections between how we see ourselves or what we picture inwardly to what we're able or not able to accomplish outwardly? What's your take on that, Sister Camille?
Your mic is okay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I love that. That's so powerful, because when we look at what self-esteem is self-esteem, like you said, it's the value that we place upon ourselves.
Wow.
So it deals with identity.
Wow.
And so I was reading something where I love that he made a distinguish. He was like distinguish between our self-image and self-confidence. So you can have someone who is confident in their ability to do something, but their self-image is very poor.
Wow.
Those can be two different things. And so why it's important for the people of God to kind of begin to allow God in those places, in those areas where we have low self-esteem. The reason why it's important is because, like you said, it's the way that we see ourselves. And how it impacts the Bible is, say, if God says, hey, I have this for you, but if I don't believe, or it's difficult for me to receive that God would have that for me, maybe he'll have that for other people. Maybe that's good for so-and-so. But when we say it's for me, that's where a lot of times people could feel a disconnect with the Bible, because it's hard for them to picture that God would be saying that about them.
And why? Why does this happen? Why is it that we Christians, right? We're Christians, so we believe the word of God. We believe in the power of God. God is the creator. Why is it that we can believe so much about who God is and what he's able to do, but when it comes to us personally, that changes? Why is our mental health affected that way in your experience?
Yeah, I really believe because we're multidimensional in so many ways. We can compartmentalize things.
Okay.
If we're able to understand it, then we're able to receive it. But if we come from, a lot of us have come from traumatic backgrounds. A lot of us come from growing up, maybe school or home, maybe parents, it's hard to be a parent, but they had good intentions, but the message or the unspoken message that they were trying to, I don't know, implement or encourage their kid to do, we could have received a different narrative. There's a guy, I can't think of his name, but he wrote the book Damage Emotions, and he was saying as kids, we're like great sponges. We can take in information, but we're horrible interpreters. So
Wow.
meaning we could go through experiences, but a lot of times it's what we place or the narrative we place on that experience. So a lot of times part of our healing journey, part of healing our self-esteem has to go back to uncover any core beliefs, any narratives that we develop. Sometimes maybe it's not the home, sometimes it's the school, maybe teens. Sometimes, it's like, why can't I fit in? Why can't I get in with that clique? Or just downright people mocking. Or, in dating relationships, you see that certain type of girl or that certain type of male that gets, these types of guys or these, whatever that can be. And I feel like that begins to sift. Because when you think about it, when we're kids, you look at kids have good self-esteem. When they're babies, they'll get out. They don't care how they look. They'll take a picture. One time my niece went up to the mirror and she kissed the mirror. She said, "You beautiful." And she was just a little baby. But as time we get messages. Messages start to come to us. And then we get to say, well, am I enough?
Wow.
Am I special enough? I know for me, I was super quiet and I didn't think anything of it. But then people started to make comments about it. Oh, you're boring. Oh, she's not one of the fun stuff. And I love my parents, but even they had made a comment like, I know you didn't miss Camille. And that's when I was like, okay, well, then it is something wrong with being quiet. And I developed a root of not feeling like enough. And so God has brought me a long way from that, but still there's layers even now where God has to pull another layer off from that.
Wow. That's very good. Very good. Sister Cheryl, one thing that I love about Sister Cheryl, she's actually comes on this panel and adds great value because she's not ashamed to come on and saying she's someone who's currently in therapy for like some of the issues that we talk about. Are these some of the things that that you go to therapy for as well, Sister Cheryl? Can you relate to anything?
I didn't really. It's hard because, like Camille says, I'm very
compartmentalized.
Yes, I can't say a word for some reason this morning. And so I didn't think that I had real self-esteem issues until the therapist started hearing the words that came out of my mouth. And when I started looking back, I picked up, I'm the type of person that I remember a lot. And now even with these panels and the things, how I remember them and how my mom remembers them, they're different because she remembers them as an adult and I remember them as a child. So what Neil is saying about the interpretation is also weird. I mean, not weird, but it's so true because it's the way I took things a lot of times. And, parents, you're raising your kid, but sometimes you don't think you have to explain as much. Right. So, like, I took a lot of negative things from church as well.
Wow.
As a kid listening in church, I took a lot of negative
things. So, elaborate on that a little bit.
So, for example, in children's church, and I remember one specifically, is I've always been a chubby kid. I was athletic, but I was always bigger than all the other kids. And I had a pastor, he was doing, talking about the 7 sins or whatever, deadly sins and gluttony. And he basically said being fat is a sin.
As to a kid.
To a room full of kids. Wow. And then when we were talking, so I was like, oh, okay. So, that's one strike against me.
Wow.
And then 2, he was talking about vanity. It was a different grade. I don't remember, but we were having a discussion about vanity, and my parents were very strict. So if you try to paint your nails, if you, put on lip gloss or lipstick, then you were trying to be fast and all these things, coupled with the church saying about vanity, then it's like, well, I'm not supposed to be really taking care of myself. That's not the important thing. The important thing is what you're doing for God. All that stuff is foolishness. And I see it in church today where people, I'm sorry, you look super raggedy all the time and you think you're being godly. Taking little parts of scripture and enforcing on people without proper explanation, I think causes a lot of self-esteem. Right. Also, the way church that I always battle with is anytime you talk about women in the church, you put their value in their relationship. So women in the church don't have any value unless you're married.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Are you a mother?
So, because the only time, that's why I never go to singles ministries, because that's all you talk about. My entire value is if I can find a Boaz. And I'm like, I don't need Boaz. That's supposed to boo, so if my entire value in church is only to be married and to be a helpmate to a man, then as an individual, as a professional, as a lawyer, I really don't have any value in this institution.
Wow.
So I'm not going to get married because I'm not docile, because that's what you promote in church.
Yeah.
And so as a person in church, I already feel like I'm not as valuable because I'm not going to ever be a housewife, taking care of 10 kids, homeschooling, looking crazy, just saying God is end all be all. I believe that my ministry is in these streets, and I'm like a way station for people to meet me where they are, and I, get super real or whatever. But that doesn't compute with what I'm being bombarded with all the time in church. So that brings my value. If this is who God says I am, then when I look at relationships, then I'm like, I'm to the floor. Don't nobody want me, because I'm not that, right? And then on top of that, the cultural bombardment, I'm darker skinned, being raised in the 90s, 80s, light is right, every video vixen is light skin, long hair. I'm not any of those things. So that brings your self-esteem to another level. And because I'm rebellious, I act like I don't care. So I put this wall as if, well, none of those things matter. I'm beautiful. I can say all those things like it's performative. But at the end of the day, I still have those thoughts in my mind. Well, he can't be looking at me if my light-skinned friend is in the car too.
Wow.
And it's just subconscious thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's not like people don't tell me I'm beautiful or whatever. It's just those are still subconscious, because when you see it all the time, if I'm in an industry where people are, making 6 figures or whatever, and all their relationships, the women look a certain way, like Camille was talking about. Everybody has a weave, everybody has their nails done, everybody, like I didn't even know everybody got their eyebrow, like I didn't know all this stuff was going on. So you're comparing yourself and who you look like to what other people have cultivated. So then you're like, oh, I'm really just, I'm hitting it out the park with not being. And then you go into a predominantly white profession where a lot of times in education, you're the only or one of the few Black people in the room. Right. And then you have to struggle with imposter syndrome, where you feel like, I went to a high school, people got killed, and they always told me in high school, well, this is going to be the best years of your life, and this is what, and you have to fight against that. And then you go to college and your teacher says the N-word and you're fighting racism and all these other things. You just become, as a Black woman, I became just a tool That's what I realized in therapy. I have become a tool to get things done. I don't even look at myself as human. It doesn't matter what I need. I will always give up my needs for the greater good. And part of it is because I'm the oldest. So you're always responsible for your younger siblings. So you become, well, it's not about me, it's about them. Then when you get into school, you know, you develop the habit of taking care of people. So you're like, it's about them, it's not about me. Then it just gets to the point where it's never about you.
Right. Wow.
And
this is a lot. Wow. I mean,
so once you become that it's never about you,
wow,
you're effectively a tool. If you're sick, you go to work. If you know you need clothes and somebody else needs clothes, they get the clothes first. You know, if it's always about somebody else to the point where you can't even talk about yourself. My friends will be like, so what's going on with you? And I'll be like, oh, everything's fine. But I noticed da 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 da. And it's like, when do I find my therapy at this point is finding my own humanity.
Question. If and I love the fact that you gave us the definition of self-esteem as it's the value we place on ourselves, then is it that Cheryl in that situation or someone based on what Cheryl is saying that she would represent has begun to place their value on what they can do for others rather than it's others' esteem and not self-esteem?
Yeah, I would agree. And I want to read this statement because I saw it and it's by David Burns. And he said, people, meaning collectively us, people value themselves to the degree that they have been valued. I'll read it again. People value themselves to the degree that they have been valued.
Wow.
That's good.
And I agree with that, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I didn't realize it, but I started to feel like my only value is what I could give.
Yeah.
I'm naturally a giver.
Yeah.
But if I have nothing that's why it's hard in my relationship with God, because what can you give God? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't give him any tangible things.
Right.
I can't go run an errand for God. I can't. I mean, I can.
I got you.
But I can't go get God some soup when it's cold outside. So it's hard because my relationship with God is not based on any tangible thing that I can give. Yeah. Whereas I created relationships with people I love.
Yeah.
But they're really based on, in my mind, not necessarily in their mind, but in my mind is, all the love languages. Cheryl, you don't call. I was like, but if you need me, I'm there. But if you don't need me, then I feel some kind of way. That's what my value is wrapped in. Like even in the work I do, like everything I do is community service and I love it. But when challenged is what are you getting out of it? Is I'm getting my value because I don't have separate value from those things.
That's good.
So it's trying to learn that if I did nothing else in the world, for anybody else in the world, I still have value. I deserve to breathe.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I've also, like the scripture, to whom much is given, much is required. I take that to the umpteenth power. Like, if I don't give, then I'm not being a good Christian. I'm not being a good human being. But I'm not even being human. I don't even take care of myself.
Right. You're not giving to the most important person. You.
Yeah. Like I said in the previous panel, it's like I have been a guest star in my own life.
Yeah.
In my own episode.
My
show is supposed to be Cheryl Bailey, and it's really everybody else starring Cheryl Bailey.
Wow, everybody else starring Cheryl Bailey.
And I wanted to say too, though, you're not alone, because when I was looking at stats, it was saying that 90% of people in our society have low self-esteem, and it's manifested through feelings of inferiority. So I found this list, if you guys don't mind if I read it,
Yes.
of like 10, this is more things, but I've 11 things that are kind of signs of in a particular area we may be experiencing low esteem. So number one, lack of inner peace. Two, being self-conscious. People pleasing. Number four, collecting all kinds of rewards to prove one's worth.
Wow.
Five, internal self-criticism or rejection of self. Number six, trying to impress others, things we don't think about. Number seven, always giving negative reactions to compliments. That got me. I was like, oh, okay. 8, bragging or self-conceit. 9, always trying to outdo the other person. Number 10, building up a defense around weakness. And that got me because it's like kind of that feel like not enjoying that feeling of weakness,
Yeah.
And then the last one, perfectionism.
I have everything on that list.
But what I love about that list is because it's some things we don't think of, because when we think of low self-esteem, we think of standing in the mirror and saying like, I hate you and I don't love myself. But it can come up in other different areas that we don't really kind of attribute to be like, what is in this space that I'm needing or I'm looking for or that I'm lacking or I feel incompleted.
Right.
One of the things that Cheryl mentioned about, giving to others and being kind. Oprah, I was looking at one of Oprah's interview, and she mentioned that she also struggled with trying to please other people and always giving to charity, giving when everybody come and ask, she always given, but she had to stop and care for herself first and say, you know what, saying no is putting me first. And that, at the same time, self-care. Saying no just means that I'm saying yes to myself.
Wow.
And I'm saying no right now to this because somebody else could help feed the children in Africa or whatever, but she have her own charity. So you just have to, prioritize whatever category that you want to help, who you want, and you can't help everybody else. It's about respecting yourself, others, loyalty, kindness. All that stuff is actually building your self-esteem. You have to work on you first before you. And I know it's hard because that's the nature that God created us with, to give and less to receive. Because a lot of people, we pray for God to bless us. And when people give us, we're like, no, it's okay. But that's God's blessing. We're turning our way right there. So it's not only about giving, but also to receive and say thank you, or,
That's good. Saying no to others is sometimes me saying yes to me.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's one of the hardest.
Yeah, it is hard.
Because you don't want to disappoint people, and you've already conditioned people to treat you a certain type of way.
Yep.
And to be that person in their lives and to really say no and saying yes to me. And the other thing that you said about loyalty, my therapist actually sent me a video about loyalty sometimes being your biggest detriment. Because that's why I tell people, oh, I'm loyal, I'm real, I'm loyal.
Wow.
But I'm loyal to everybody else, but I ain't loyal to me.
Right.
Well, that's
like
good.
You're loyal to the person who's and they never loyal to you, but you just loyal to them because that's just who you are. But it's really just the weakness of, I don't like to say weakness, but it's the low self-esteem of not wanting to advocate for yourself and not wanting to say, no, I deserve better. And to actually, be willing to lose people. Yeah. And that's what I want Camille, if you could talk about a little bit, is how does low self-esteem and abandonment or get us into bad relationships?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about, because abandonment can come from many different things, but when we're young, when we're you know, maybe whoever was our caregiver, our parental, you know, people who we identify as our parental relationship, we form attachments to them. And they could be stable, secure attachments. They could be anxious attachment, because maybe that person is yeah, they show up sometimes, but then sometimes they don't. Then there could be the avoidant attachment, you know, where that parent's around, but it's almost like they're not around. Like, there's different attachments that we form with our you know, with our caregivers, that if we're not aware of, that's still there, that's within us. We, within our relationships, within our friendships, within our romantic relationships, that will show up. We will even draw towards people who maybe, I'll give an example, you know, the narcissist and the empath. You know, the person that you know, is touchy-feely and feels people and feels other people's burdens, is given, they will draw towards someone who is emotionally unavailable, who is a person that isn't about giving, and maybe not on the surface they realize that, but on the surface, maybe they're telling themselves, like, I'm helping this person, I can help them do this, I'm doing good, see how they're improving.
Right.
All the while not really realizing that this person isn't showing up for them.
Wow.
Isn't there for them? Isn't giving back to them, that all this person is doing is just receiving. And so I am a big you know, proponent of, you know, we attract people, and
That's
maybe
true.
yeah, and especially spiritually, then we get into trauma bonds, you know, things that we have traumatically been in, that somebody else has been in, that we're bonding out of our trauma. We're bonding on a spiritual level, but it's really because of dysfunction.
Right.
So that definitely is a real thing. And then also too, certain things don't read as trouble. When things have been our norm, or we call them our norm, it doesn't read as dysfunction. So you can definitely, like you said, you went into your therapist's office and she had to hear the language. She had to hear the language and be like, huh, wait a minute, let's explore that deeper. So some people can have some low self-esteem on a like a subconscious level or an unconscious level, and so that therefore not really realizing that, hey, when I'm in situations, I'm always, I don't know, I'm always giving, or when I'm in situations, you know, I have trouble setting boundaries, or the boundaries are very blurred, or I feel uncomfortable to, we talked about self-esteem, uncomfortable to say no. Or, you know, I know I used to say, man, people always take from me. You know, people are always taking from me, and then I had to stop and be like, wait a minute, like, let's listen to that language. People are taking. So where in my life can I put up a boundary to where I'm not feeling victimized?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I struggled with too, is that you give so much and you're like, I'm just doing this to be a giver, and
Yeah.
you know, this is what I love to do. And then anything small happens, and then now you're like, no, people are just taking advantage of me.
Yeah. Yeah, and right. And when I need people, where are people at?
There.
When I need a favor, where are people at?
That's funny.
Exactly.
That's
So that's one of the things that I know I have to struggle with and say, okay, where was my part in this?
Yeah.
Did I
okay.
even want to do this in the first place?
Yeah.
And then why did I do it?
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to say no. And so am I going to do it again? And how am I going to change the behavior?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that self-care,
Okay.
which is the thing that people have always been talking that I need to do. And I'm like, I take care of myself, but then I really realize I don't.
Yeah.
So does engaging in self-care serve as a potential remedy to low self-esteem? That's a question.
I think it does, because it puts the focus, it takes the focus off of other people.
Yes.
And puts the focus back on you.
Yeah.
Like and everybody's self-care is different. It's not just hair done, nails done, everything done. Like that's what we kind of have limited self-care to. One of the things my therapist makes me do is I have to go take a walk, not for exercise, just a walk to observe nature.
Wow.
To feel the vitamin D on my skin, which is the sun. Wow. And to observe nature. And I walk around my house for exercise. It's about a couple miles. And when I did it, I walked a lot slower. And I was like, there's a pomegranate tree. I've been walking past this house for like, I was like, oh, the leaves are turning blue. Oh my God, look at the sky. There's a different, like there's a whole, and then I don't have time in my brain to ruminate over, well, I should have said this word different instead of saying that word, and I should have done this. Why didn't you just say that? And why didn't you just do this? And oh my God, you're not good enough because because now I'm looking at the pomegranates and I'm, and it's just to take the time to separate, to stop my brain from abusing myself.
That's good.
And to appreciate something different. That's one of the, one self-care step.
That's good.
And it does help. I can notice the difference when I do it and when I don't.
Yeah. I love that. I was going to say, two things. Well, one, increasing emotional intelligence is huge. When it comes to us beginning to just really, I just say level up. We're all, growing in God, to leveling up, because a lot of times what, you will begin to notice is our emotions and our feelings, or our how we feel about stuff is there. We just have to pull it under it, because when we're so used to a certain pattern, it could be quick. If someone asks us to do something, and it could be with our immediate action could be like, oh, I don't, but then we'll put it away. It'll be like, no, I'll do it. Even though our first reaction was like, wow, if I do this, I'm going to be overwhelmed. But we kind of so I tell people, getting back connected to that first response. That first response when someone asks you to do something, or maybe that tone when someone says, blah, 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 and it hits you, getting connected. What was my first response? And so that's kind of how a check-in that I do with myself, because it's quick for me to kind of dismiss it and be like, oh, okay, they said it that way, but it wasn't no big deal. When my first response was, it was a big deal. And so that, going back to self-care, you guys were getting into it. There's macro self-care and micro self-care. Macro self-care is getting away, taking the massage, doing the facial, doing something on a big scale to help yourself typically relax or create boundaries or distance. Micro self-care is kind of what Cheryl's doing, taking that walk, setting that boundary, what you guys were talking about, saying no when we really want to say no. Micro self-care is, hey, when I feel like I'm at my limit, I stop. I don't keep on going. I don't overwork. Micro self-care can be also if I need to take a minute during the day and pray, or do a reflective prayer, or do a meditative prayer, or do a 5-minute deep breathing. That's micro self-care.
That's good. Wow.
Yeah, I love that.
One of the things that you said about when you reach your limit to stop, I think that's a big thing, especially for Black people. We've been very conditioned that you have to work harder, be better, and follow that. One of the things that I started doing is I follow on Instagram. It's called the Nap Ministry. And if you're too holy, then don't follow. But one of the things that I love is that it tells you this is why you nap. And it's a form of revolution. It's a form of resistance, because we learned that overworking from slavery. And and then after slavery, when we weren't working for free, then they stereotyped us as being lazy. And now we've been outworking that lazy stereotype. And it's killing us. There was the World Health Organization did a new study, And it says that overworking will take 30% to 40% off your life.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like naps and really just stopping everything, disconnecting is so important, even in the the minimal sense of, okay, if we're at the table, put away your phones, just to be in the present and not be always working. And they're saying that more people who stayed home from COVID working from home, there was a lot more heart attacks.
Wow.
Because when you're working from home, there's no disconnect between the workspace and the home space. So unless you're really disciplined, you're working actually more from home than you would work at work. I experienced that as well.
Yeah, me
so
too.
I'm glad that Camille brought that up, because a lot of us are overworking, and especially because we have hustle culture right now, which is really big, where everybody's trying to make $1 million before they're 30. And, I love, do what you do. But everybody thinks they're supposed to have 37 side hustles.
Right.
And you're really just killing yourself, because you're number one, you're not doing what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And following it in a biblical way, which I believe is that if you do what you are talented to and what God has ordained for you, then the doors will open. You don't have to have 3,700 streams of income. They will come naturally. But it also negates and it brings back the stereotype of the strong Black woman having to have 8 jobs in order to support a single family and all these other things. And the same, and Black men, you got to hustle because you're not a man if you don't hustle. And those things are also part of, number one, low self-esteem, because your value is in how much money you have. And number 2, hustle culture is going to kill you. And number 3, you got to rest, because that's self-care.
Right.
Rest.
Wow.
Good.
That's
So good.
good.
And that blessed me.
It's good.
Miss Camille mentioned emotional health, which was good. I love that you mentioned emotional health. Like if somebody asks you to do something and you just respond and say, okay, I'll do it. Like a lot of times I find myself doing that. And I said, oh man, I should never take on that on myself. It's too much. But we have to, at least if you don't know what to say and you don't want to say yes, I find myself saying, let me think about it. Or, then I have time to evaluate and what I really want to do. And then the thing with emotional, that I feel like is good too, is when I could find myself to feel, to be able to cry, to get angry about certain things and not hold it in, to be able to laugh and feel free to express myself in a space that is going to help me to feel better about myself without causing harm to other people.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah, because it could be so, it's because we have to work, because we have to compartmentalize being, who we are at the job, who we are to our families, who we are at church. It's very easy to kind of be disconnected with our feelings, because we can't sit around and feel all day. We just can't. We got to get up. Sometimes you got to push past the feeling. So it's good. I love that you shared that, because there is part of the work is being intentional. So because we can't feel all day, we have to create space and time within our day, within our week, to be intentional.
That's good.
That's good. That's good. I want to remind people we're still open for questions. And even if you question anonymously with the email we put, Cheryl will check that and we'll get that question addressed as well. But I want you to know that you all do. There is a platform for questions. I think somebody's texting me a question right now.
Camille, I love what you said about, I think we don't talk about emotion enough. And depending on your different cultures and how you were raised, emotion wasn't really something that you were allowed to explore.
Right.
And so one of the hardest things for me is recognizing my emotions. So my emotions usually come out in my dreams when I go to sleep. Okay. So in my dreams, I'm always at war, I'm always fighting and all these other things, because I haven't dealt with things in real life. Do you have any tips how to start to recognize emotions that we may not have been allowed to express, and how to express them in a way that, as First Lady Collins said, that is, healthy and not unhealthy?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. I think first I would encourage an individual. Are you able to identify what emotions you weren't allowed to express? So was that anger?
Hmm.
Was that disappointment? Like you have to be happy all the time because Jesus is good, so why would you ever be disappointed? Like if you're able to first identify what was the spoken or unspoken rules about around certain emotions, maybe not all, but certain emotions, that I think that's the first step. So then when you are going back to in certain situations, paying attention to what was my first response, because a lot of times I find that even if it's a small whisper or a small voice, it's still there. And so even if it's like very like quick or it's 2 seconds, is what was my first response to a situation, to that person's tone, to when that person did that, to when I set a boundary and they didn't respect it, or they made a comment, or they still did it anyway. What was my first response to that? The reason why that's important, because in there is going to be housed how you feel about the situation, how you feel about your value system, your belief system, and all of that connected to it. Some people like journaling, but I also know some people who don't like journaling. If you're not opposed to journaling, that's a great way, because what it'll do is there's something cathartic about, there's actually even research about our brain and when we're writing out something. So that's why we remember things more, because I don't know the research behind it. I just know that there's research behind it, but it's also very cathartic. So as we sit down, maybe we just have a little bit of the story, but as we begin to write it, that will facilitate the process of more of it coming up, because we're getting connected to the deeper things or the inner life. I do know some people that they're opposed to journaling. I have some clients I cannot get them to journal for life, but
Yeah. I love journaling too.
Yeah, I'm one of those clients.
Yeah, I love journaling. It, like you said,
time to do it.
Yeah, unload all that negative and painful memories, and it helps to it helps me to take some stuff off my brain. Or whatever I have, and it's somewhere that is safe, that nobody else isn't gonna like judge me or what I write down or let out. And it helped me to develop and get to know me after I could look back and reflect at the end of the day what I'm writing down. It helped me to reflect like, wow, that's what got me upset, or that's what made me happy, and all this stuff. So it's offloading stuff, and you can use journaling for anything, writing goals and writing down stuff for your day tomorrow. So yeah.
Here's my journal right here.
That's his journal. I can't do that. I could do it, but I prefer writing down because I see words better than just doing this on my phone.
Yeah, I'm a writer.
I'm a writer too.
I have a question for you, Sister Camille. Somebody sent me a question.
Yeah.
In this person's industry, they didn't name the industry that they work in, they see and they hear humans at their worst. What do you recommend to clear my thoughts each day?
Yeah. So that I'm glad they're asking that, because there are some jobs where we could get secondary trauma just from, I had a young lady who was, I think it was I don't know if she was a paralegal, but she was working within the immigration office. And she was like, I heard horrible stories about people running across the border and all, so it can happen in many different fields where we could be hearing traumatic things. So one is first identifying that we're hearing trauma, that we're hearing traumatic things, because then that reframes it in our brain, instead of like, I'm just going to work and I hear sad things. No, you're hearing traumatic things. And so now that we've identified that, what at the end of the day, helpful things that I do as a therapist, I do it on my car ride home. Because like you said, Cheryl, we don't always have time to sit down with a journal, but maybe on our way home, we could just take 15 minutes. And one thing is, what came up for you that day? What was it about the story that you heard? Because sometimes we're triggered by things because it triggers something from our own story. Okay. So what came up for me today? Did it remind me of someone? Did it remind me of something? What feelings are connected? Do I feel hopeless? Do I feel hopeless? Do I feel dark, about the world? I know when I was working with children, foster care children, and I was hearing stories, I'm like, people are awful. This world is awful. I want to go get a gun, and shoot somebody because it was just too much, But so identify what's going on within me. What is this? Is this story bringing something out of me? Is it bringing something out of me of what I've been through or what I've known other people have been through? And then also too, what is my belief about it?
Yeah.
Is it saying, is my belief that everyone is like this? Is my belief that, I don't know, maybe it's about a certain gender or a certain ethnicity of people? Maybe there is a narrative that's starting to be developed, and so then you can, once you identify that narrative, you can sit back and say, like, is this truth? Is this accurate? Or is this because I've heard 5 different stories of this same situation? And for me, what that looked like is, well, Camille, you're dealing with foster care children, and you are in a place where they're coming to you for help. So you're going to hear the worst of the worst. So it's not a story that the world is like this. It's just the setting that I am in. It's conducive for hurting people to come. That was my positive reframe. That was my reframe that helped me get through it. Also, too, involving God. Hey, God, I cast this onto you. I heard this. It was horrible. Blah, blah, blah. I cast it on to you.
Yes.
Please allow your spirit to wash me, to heal me, to cleanse me from the horrible things that I heard today, to fill me back up with your love, to fill me back up with your peace. I pray off anything that tried to attach itself from hearing that story, because some certain things, a lot, I'm a believer. There's an exchange of things that happen when there's 2 people, even in pastoral counseling. There's an exchange. That person will be feeling great, and then you're feeling like, well, now why do I feel sad? Why do I feel? But we have to kind of pray that off. Wash us, God, wash our spirit off. I receive back my joy. I receive back my peace. And then also too, do something that fills up your cup, whether it's doing your fun jams, like Cheryl, going on that nice nature walk, mental health walk, something really small that's going to just fill you back up. I hope that helps.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really good, Camille, because I deal with the same type of high stress job. And one of the things on top of that is realizing when you start to get too full of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And really, because at one point when I was working in juvenile, I had to take holy water and pray over the entire courtroom, because at that point I felt like demons lived in that courtroom. That's how bad. And I had to pray over the entire courtroom. And then I just started getting help with therapy as well as pastoral counseling. Pastor Hosea, I know he didn't see me go crazy a couple times. And one of the things that really helped was I would take my workout clothes to work. And at the end of the day, I would physically change, which mentally changed my focus.
Oh, that's good.
And then it gave me no excuse. And then I would go out. And a lot of times when I was working out, especially something I didn't want to do, like stairs, I would just start crying during my workouts, like bawling. And my personal trainer was just like, I don't know what's going on. And I just couldn't help it. It was all the stuff that was in my body started coming out with the pressure of the workout. And I would just be crying and people would be looking at me. But at the end, I was able to at least talk about it because now it was physically out of my body. And I could say, I had a really tough day, this is what happened. And I could let it out that way. But what you're saying is so true, is that you do get filled up with so much drama and trauma. At one point, I knew I was at war. I was at war with everybody and everything. I'm like, they try to kill Black people. They just, this is what's going on. And I know we have another question, so I'm gonna stop there. But my therapist was like, you have to reframe it as what is true. This is not true.
No, this is good. I want to get through these questions because I know we've run out of time, but I need to get it. It's one statement and one question. One is I have an extremely stressful job and I made a huge mistake. Please pray for me in this time. Lord, bless Felicia to get through her mistake and recover. Lord God, that she would learn from this. Only wasted experience is one we don't grow from. So let her grow from it and be better moving forward in Jesus' name. All right, now this other one. This is Doobie. This is a question to close on right here. I am a widow. I have a question. My husband was murdered tragically in front of me and my children, and we watched him die. How do me and my children not flash back and trigger each other? Second, how do we accept when we are told everything happened within God's plan? I'll start the answer because I'm going to address that God's plan.
Yeah.
When you told everything happens within God's plan, you told a lie.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that, as Cheryl brought out earlier in this, as a church, we've made a lot of mistakes with the messaging that we've put over. And we're learning more and correcting more. But there has been, anytime anybody who's in a position to transfer truth, they're also capable of transferring error. And so everything that happened was not in God's plan. I ain't got time to teach a Bible study on that, but stick with me and I will address that more and more for you. God gave human beings free will. And if God controlled every single thing that happened, then you just eliminated free will.
That's a great point.
It would not be free will. If it's God, we would just be robots. But no, that whole thing, that everything that happened was God's plan, is really not biblically accurate. Now, God has an overall plan on how things will all come to an end and the totality. But all of the little intricacies that happen within that time are not all on him. But I know the bigger question is, how do they operate without triggering one another and things of that nature? And they lost him in December of 2020. So
we have one other question after this.
Okay. I was just going to say, just to kind of quickly, it sounds like, I'm hearing a little bit of PTSD, post-traumatic stress. So I would say definitely getting in a grief support group. I believe it was in January where we did the grief forum, and there was a lot of stuff impact on that. So if you could go back to, I believe, was it in January, Cheryl, where we did the grief?
I think it was January.
Yeah, it was solely dedicated to that. So what's going on is I'm hearing PTSD and grief, and it was a collective thing. So please go back and watch that forum because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
And I think also, just because I deal with the opposite end of that, if your husband was murdered, that means that the VA is involved in that case, and they do have a victim impact counselor. So if you go to the VA's office and let them know that you're struggling, they'll get you restitution, money from the victim impact plan. They will also set you up with a social worker and a counselor to kind of just help you and navigate some things in the short term. But I do agree you need to definitely get into some grief counseling, and we have a lot of resources in the grief panel. So you can also email the mental health, and I'll forward it to Pastor Hosea to get you some more details about that. And Pastor Hosea, if you have time, do you want to just do it's the very last question, is very short.
Yes. What I'm also doing, in addition to what you just did, I just put up the church's email, the basic email, calvaryhawthorne@gmail.com. And of course, you can use the mental health email as well. But I just gave you that one so that my sister with that question, if you want to reach out to me personally, and it's from a pastoral standpoint, thing that I can offer to support you and your children, I just put the church email in there. Just reach out and you and I can connect from there personally.
That's awesome.
Okay. And the final question is, how do you start to get past the self-esteem issues when you don't have funds for a therapist?
Well, where you start, I can start on it here, and I know they can offer some other resources. if you have a local church, first and foremost, if you are a member of a local church, pastoral counseling is always an option that you have with your pastor. And sometimes churches that are more well-funded and organized may have a pastoral ministry, a counseling ministry or counselors on staff to assist with that. Or they have referrals to places that can take you with low income or no funding and things of that nature. So that's one place to start, just to get started when you don't have money for a therapist. And secondly, of course, I'm not trying to just be spiritual, but we know that everything we take to God in prayer can help. But I'm a firm advocate of sitting down with someone too, because sometimes someone that you can touch, see, hear, that human impact has a very strong presence. And there are a lot of resources. When you say you don't have funding, I get it. But there are a lot of resources in the world today that you can find places that can offer the support even when you don't have the money. Right. Now that you may have to seek it out and have to get on Google and call 211 and things of that nature and go through churches and things of that nature. But everything we need in the world we live in today is accessible. Even if you got to go to YouTube videos and type in having trouble with this, there's somebody speaking on that issue that can minister to you. So I'm just saying, don't allow a lack of funding to be an excuse. Is really the point I'm making, to not seek it out. Because if you pray about it and ask God to send you someone, and then you put in the work, you will get connected to get what you need. I'm a firm believer, and they may have some resources and thoughts on that too. So I want to move it forward.
No, I was saying that is so true. Like, put it in and Googling, because there's been a lot of places offering free stuff or very low just because of the pandemic and everything that's going on. I know there's a group that I follow on Instagram. It's Black Girls Can Heal. And one thing they just recently put up, they were like, if you don't have money, there's support group, searching for support groups. Sometimes even life coaches are way cheaper than therapists. There's mental health apps that people place up. Also, too, you could ask the therapist for a sliding scale, or even your insurance. You could go through your insurance, and some insurances, they may pay for like 6 sessions or things like that. And then just stuff that you can kind of do on your own. Like he said, you could go to YouTube, see people who are talking about self-esteem, get workbooks, books, journaling. I think the process is more so making yourself aware, of knowledge, because that's the first step. That's how change comes, is when we're aware and we're knowledgeable. And then from there, you can even talk to your community. Who in your community be surprised if you ask people for books. They're like, this book helped me through this, or this workbook helped me through this. And like he said, pastoral, accessing your pastor and allowing him, to grow you in how God is leading. So don't give up or be discouraged.
Hey, I know that person is asking some questions, may not be on all of these platforms, but someone on our YouTube platform put up some ways that you can get free services. I'm going to show them on the screen, and I'm going to have to keep removing them and interchanging them. So if you can write these down or take a screenshot.
Nice. I'm going to take a picture.
If you can, the person who wants that information, take a picture, write it down, whatever. And I'm going to put up the next one now, because there's a total of 3. So I'm going to remove that one now and put up the next one. And again, you can write it down, take a picture, or whatever works. And thank you, Stephanie D, for hearing the question and providing feedback. Nice. And then I'm going to remove this one. I'm going to put up the last one that Stephanie D provided to us. And so these are all free mental health services that can assist you without fun. So see how God, the Bible says we have not because we ask not. Ask and you shall receive. Look, before we can even finish answering your questions, God was already providing answers.
Amen. Yes.
Also, I want to put up the information. Let me type this. It's in the private chat. Cheryl, let me see, will it let me copy and paste it? Yes, it will. Wonderful.
Sorry, I'm still not sure.
Wasn't talking to you, Siri. Was not talking to
Siri,
you. I am not talking to you. And now when I'm talking to her, she act like she can't hear. But anyway. So I am putting up right now the Instagram handle for attorney Cheryl Bailey. So if you want to reach out to her following this, and I'm also putting up the IG account for Sister Camille. If you want to reach out following this. Paste. For MFT Camille Collins. All right, those are in the chat box. And if you want to reach out to me and Sister Doran, here's the church email address again.
We got everything.
Right, we got covering all bases. For Pastor and First Lady
at the rescue
Collins. Now, you got us all. We're all in the chat box. You can reach out to us at any time. Oh, I want to thank everybody for joining us. And let's have closing remarks. Sister Cheryl, Sister Camille, Sister Doran, closing remarks. Close us out, Cheryl. Oh, hold on, Cheryl.
It's on mute.
All right, now, closing remarks from Sister Cheryl.
Self-esteem and self-care are so important. It's literally changing my life a day by day. Two of the apps that I use is I Am, just I, and then AM is on Apple, all the sites, and it gives you daily affirmations. It tells you that you're beautiful. You can choose the areas that you have trouble in, and it'll provide affirmations every 15 minutes or however time that you need throughout the day, just to remind you about how great you are. And then the other one is called Headspace, HEADSPACE, which is a meditation, which again, you just put in the areas in which you're struggling with, and you can do it in meditation, breathing exercises, and just continue to get affirmations about who you are, because Pastor always says, faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God, and everything that we hear, we learn, and everything that we say, we hear, and we learn. And so since I talk to myself negatively, I constantly need something to talk to me positively.
Right.
So be positive. This too shall pass, and just take it one day at a time. We don't change overnight.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
that's good.
Sister Camille.
I love that. That's so good. Cheryl, you made me think of on my screensaver. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but I have my daily confessions.
Yeah.
And I just love it, and I speak it over myself. And so it's putting it in my face so I can see it, so I don't forget it, so I can just put it in my spirit, because I just believe at the core of ourself is what causes us to go out there and pursue that dream or do what God is calling us to do. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm going to use that. You made it your screensaver. That's brilliant. I'm doing that today. So you created your own, or this an app too?
No, I just someone had a list of confessions, so I screenshot it and then cropped it.
You invent the wheel. I love it. I love it. I love it. Sister Doran, final closing remarks.
Yes, Pastor. Okay, so So self-esteem for basically like what you guys mentioned is doing something that you enjoy, that makes you happy, self-care. And you know, it has to do with saying no to others, which is saying yes to yourself, because the door that you're going to go through, that God is going to take you through, is not meant, or it can't fit 50 people on going along with you. It's meant for you alone to go through that door. And there's doors that you might have to close in your life in order for God to take you where, you know, he wants to take you to make a change in your life and others. So
amen. And my closing remarks is that of the stewardess on the plane that you're getting ready to take off on.
mm-hmm.
In the event that the oxygen level decreases and the mask come down, here is how you put on the mask. And please make sure you secure your mask firmly and tightly first before you attempt to help anybody else with theirs. On that note, God bless you. God keep you. God bless.
God bless you guys.